Magnus Carlsen takes on Bilguun Sumiya, a grandmaster rated 2439. And it's always exciting when Magnus plays against such opponents because you generally don't get to see him playing against them in super tournaments. It's the WR chess team that Magnus is representing against Hunnu Air at the FIDE World Rapid Team Championship, and this is 15 minutes plus 10 seconds increment. You can see on the adjoining board you have Duda, Prague, Keimer. What a team WR Chess have. And it's been a trend in this tournament that Magnus's opponents are coming later than him. Bilguun is not here. He is a grandmaster from Mongolia and he is quite a strong player. But the rating difference is nearly 400 ELO points, and it will be interesting to see how the game develops and how he manages to fight against the greatest player on the planet. For now, everyone's waiting for the round to begin. And there you have him. Bilguun enters there and the game started. Magnus is always very careful about, starting the clock only after his opponents arrive. And here he was just in time. Bilguun takes his time, just gets into the groove and opens with 1e4. Magnus, making sure that the board is clean, has to decide on what openings to play, because generally when you're playing at a high level, you know your openings well against super GMs, but when you're playing against players who are much lower rated than you, you want a fighting game of chess. So here we have the Sicilian and a close Sicilian with knight c3, and Magnus goes a6 and Bilguun goes g3. Now this opening is very, very popular at lower levels, but not at all popular at top level chess. So Magnus won't be very well prepared against it. So this is a very smart opening choice here by Bilguun. e6 played, knight goes to h3, keeping the f pawn free in case it wants to move ahead. Knight comes out to f6, and now you can just castle here. Yes, castling is a normal move. And Magnus has to decide how to continue here. He puts his pawn on d6. Generally in such openings, white gets a very dangerous attack rolling sometimes with these pawns, and while black has overextended a bit on the queen side and his king is in the center. But Magnus playing logically, knight comes to f2, and now the knight comes out on c6. So black has completed his development, and I think the position is roundabout even. But look at Bilguun's move. g4. He wants to go g5. Magnus quickly brings his knight to d7. And now Bilguun brings his knight from e2 to g3 and maybe going towards h5. Wow. And look at this move by Magnus. He's playing on the dark squares. I thought he would castle, but he goes g5. The game is heating up. Knight to g3 played. The upside of this move by g5 and gf4 for Magnus is that now he has greater control on dark squares, but the downside is his king is in the center and f7 pawn is a bit weak. Knight goes to e5, and the g4 pawn has to be kept, you have to keep an eye on it. Knight g6 played here by Magnus, attacking the bishop. The bishop comes back. And how is Magnus going to continue here? He goes bishop. He wants to play his bishop. Maybe bishop g5. So it's all dark square strategy. Queen d2 played by Bilguun. The reason why this position is good for white is because the black king is very weak. h6. It's a good move here by Magnus. And now Can we go knight h5? Yes, he does. g7, f6, everything under pressure there. How is Bilguun going to continue here is the question with knight h5. But first he's posed very important questions on Magnus. Knight e5 played here. And knight to h3. What a nice move here. Putting pressure further on g5 and actually sacrificing a pawn. Bishop e3, queen e3 and giving up this g4 pawn. Because after knight takes g4, the queen is attacked, but then the f6 square is weak, g7 is weak, and the queen can switch to g3. And you can see Magnus being very careful before snatching that pawn on g4. Bilguun has played very well out of the opening to put the world number 1 under pressure. Takes the pawn on g4. And now queen to g3. Good move there. White has a clear advantage. Knight e5 and now rook f4 is a very powerful move. The point being, after rook g8, you have knight f2 and you win a piece. But instead, he goes d4, pawn takes, but it seems that he has missed Magnus's next move. Queen b6, pinning the pawn and also attacking it, and this saves the day for Magnus. Otherwise, he would have lost a piece, but clearly he had it calculated. Rook d1 played, and now he can take out time and defend his knight here with rook g8 so that the other knight can move away. Whoa, he long castles. Wow. What if I just go king h1? Exactly. Now this is hanging and this is hanging. He goes rook g8 now. And can we not take here? Well, you can, but then there's knight e3, forking and attacking the queen. So first Bilguun goes for a check. Queen c6 is possible because after take, it's fine for black. But he goes king b8 here. And now Bilguun takes the knight. Knight e3. Position is extremely sharp here. Very difficult to play. Goes bishop to f3. Now take on d1. Take on d1 and d takes e5. But Magnus finds an intermezzo b4, which is also very strong. Where can the queen go? He goes queen c1 to attack this knight, to keep an eye on it. Magnus can attack the queen further with rook c8. But first he takes on f1. The material balance in the position is that black has a rook and 2 pawns for 2 pieces, that's 2 knights, and somehow Magnus's pieces are much better coordinated, so he is better, but the position is extremely sharp. And so Bilguun goes knight f6, attacking the rook. And now if you go rook g6, there is bishop h5. So he goes rook g7, but now Bilguun goes and snatches this pawn. Magnus has to move his rook. He goes rook g6. Now queen h4 is definitely possible, but he goes queen h5, and his point is, if you take here, I give a check and I win your rook. So you can't do that. He goes king a7. But now queen takes e5 is possible. Bilguun takes, so he's got 1 pawn back. 2 knights for a rook and pawn now. In fact, he's got 2 pawns back. Queen e3 played. It's just that the rook can get active here. The other rook is active here. Bishop g2. And maybe rook g2 is a great idea, because rook g8, you can't take this bishop e4. In fact, Magnus goes queen d4, offering a queen trade. But in the process, he's kind of lost all his advantage. Takes. Rook takes. This is a fantastic fight here by Bilguun. Plays rook f2 very quickly. He's down to 34 seconds. Magnus has 1 minute 43 seconds. Now a5 might be a good idea. Yes, he pushes his pawn. The queenside pawns can help to create a passer on the queen side. b3 played. and Magnus goes rook h6. Knight goes back to g1 and rook d1. Yes, he plays his rook to d1, but now Bilguun has kind of covered everything. You see, the rook protects the pawn, the rook protects the knight. He goes h3. He wants to bring his king up, then bring his knight into the game. So slowly and steadily he's putting pressure on Magnus, and Magnus is unable to find all the accurate moves here, and he's getting into a disadvantageous position. He brings the king in, but now just knight f3. Yes, brings the knight in. This is actually becoming a huge advantage. Knight e5, attacking the f7 pawn. You have the h pawn, which is a passer. You can see Magnus there feeling the heat. Knight e5 is a very powerful move. Yes, finds it. f7 under pressure. Goes rook d8, but time to roll the h pawn down the board. No one's going to stop it. But Bilguun comes back. He wants to stop rook d2. Well, in a way, makes sense. But in a way, he's also given Magnus some very important time. And Magnus is rushing with his king now, so that he can stop the h pawn. Goes e5 check. King comes to e7. And now h4 moving forward. He takes the knight. And at least now Magnus gets this rook d2 move, which will give him good counterplay against the a2 pawn. Still not easy. Rook d2 played. He plays king g3 takes, king takes, and the other rook moves in. So now it's a battle between black's queenside pawns and white's h pawn. Which is faster? King e3 takes the pawn, and now maybe you just push the pawn. But there was also another idea to put the bishop on c6 and put it on a4. That could have been played. But for now, we are moving in this direction. Rook a3, you can see Bilguun shaking his head. The position is still close to equal. But it's the pressure of playing Magnus along with just being on the last few seconds, which is going to make him go wrong. Rook takes b3. King f4 makes sense. And now h7 is a big threat, so you need to go king f8. So king f8, and now knight h7 to knight g5 is important, but he quickly pushes the pawn, which is the final error of the game, because now the king can easily stop the pawn, and these two pawns on the queen side are monstrous. He needed to go knight h7, knight g5, bishop h5, use his pieces there. Rook c3 is such a calm and cool move by Magnus, because Magnus saw that after knight e8, king h8, if the knight comes to d6 to attack the f7 pawn, which it does, now he has rook c7. So this move, rook c3, is a sign of a great champion who can actually slow down when needed and then speed up when that's needed as well. So Magnus calculating beautifully here and has managed to get a very nice position. Rook d7, he is now winning. He has controlled all of his opponent's counterplay, and it's time to make his queenside pawns rolling. This is also the way in which he won his game against Arjun Erigaisi. He had two queenside passers, and this position is no different. Now b3 coming in. Just wanting to calculate everything. He goes a3. And Bilguun would be kicking himself. He had a great opportunity to beat the former world champion and the current world #1 and perhaps the greatest player to have ever played chess. And such opportunities don't come too often. But he gave a great fight and he can be proud of himself. For now, Magnus is doing it his own way, pushing the pawn, making it into a queen. There's no way to stop the pawn now. Knight comes to d6. He just takes it. Pawn takes and makes a queen here. And look at Bilguun there. So upset. d7. I think he was almost going to bite his hand. and Magnus wins. But a great fight by Bilguun Sumiya of Hunnu Air, and he did put a lot of pressure on Magnus, which is definitely something to be proud of. But in the end, Magnus showed his class, kept up his chances, and won the game.